Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and this week I'm joined by the founder and CEO of GP, Nicole Sahin. Nicole and I caught up to talk about Davos, right? The World Economic Forum annual event in Davos, Switzerland, which Nicole attends every year. And I thought, hey, it would be great to just learn what you learned. What's the experience like? What's going on there? How do we cut through all the media, right? There's a lot of media around this. You've got presidents attending, prime ministers, economic leaders, the biggest company CEOs, and increasingly HR tech leaders like Nicole. And so I said, hey, let's just catch up. And she was very kind to allow me to hit record, right, on our private conversation. And I'm so grateful for that. And so, look, just hope you'll enjoy this episode. I think there is, like I said, a lot of noise that comes out of Davos. The media really spins a lot of that stuff. And I think it'd be great for someone to cut through that and give us, the real practical pieces that we can work with. And so as HR leaders and HR, innovators out there listening, I hope that this is helpful for you, right? And I hope that you're able to get a bit of an insider's view of what goes on at Davos and what we ought to be thinking about the conversations that were happening there. So without further delay, please welcome Nicole Sahin. Nicole, it's so good to see you again, fresh from Davos.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you, Pete. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I know you go to the big event every year, the World Economic Forum annual meeting, I think they call it, in Davos, Switzerland, and I would love to debrief with you a little bit on what you heard, what gets you excited, what you're seeing, what we really need to be thinking about as leaders, in HR and business, and just kind of get your pulse on what the event's like. I know most of us might never ever make it there. I've heard it's invite only. I've heard you can go without an invite. You can still make it, but yeah, just thought we could do that if it's cool.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. It's a lot of fun and
Yeah,
it's a really interesting event. So maybe you want me to just give you a breakdown of the vibe
yeah,
and what it feels like
yeah.
to be
Well,
there?
let's explain what it is exactly. The
Yeah.
World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. Explain what the event is, maybe, and then kind of the vibe of it all.
World Economic Forum is a gathering of the world's most highly placed people in the world. So and what I
Yeah,
mean by
yeah.
that is
All the
most
presidents.
powerful people. Yeah, it's all the trade ministers, all the presidents, all the prime ministers, big government leaders, but it's also big company executives. So any big company, any big public company would have a presence at Davos. But at Davos, it wouldn't be like the VP of communications is there. They might be, but it's like the CEO, the COO will be there. And then there's also a group of tech pioneers. So I was there as part of the unicorn founders cohort. Companies who have $1 billion in valuation plus that are led by a founder, they'll invite the founders to go. And then finally, they have a contingent called I think it's called the World Changers Group, something like that. But these are people under the age of 30 who are making a big impact on the ground,
Cool.
whatever country they're in. And
Yeah.
they're like social change agents. So, somebody who has drastically contributed to clean water in the Congo or is working to end poverty, but has already been accomplished in a big way somewhere around the world. So like the Sacred Headwaters Alliance, which is a group of 30 indigenous nations in the Amazon that are working to save the sacred headwaters of the Amazon rainforest, they'll have a contingent that goes there. And the vibe is there's a few things. First, executives go because it's the place where you're most likely to be able to you can get half a year's worth of meetings done in 1 week.
I
So, for
bet.
example, normally if I wanted to go meet the chief strategy officer and CEO of ADP, Workday, SAP, and I don't know, name a handful of other companies, that would take me months. Like I'd be flying all
Yeah,
over
yeah.
to do that. Instead, I can get all my meetings done in like 2 days. But then another key reason people like to go is it's just like the mind share. Like literally
Yeah.
anybody that you bump into in the cafeteria line or what getting up a cup of coffee is going to be really interesting and have something interesting about the world to say. So there's the productive value of it. There's the interesting people value of it. And then there's government, corporate people, but then there's all these people who are really invested in doing something awesome in the world, like creating change, like a cryptocurrency founder,
Right.
like people who are like, I'm going
Yeah.
to change the world system. That's what I'm here to do. And having that many people who are really interesting in one dense, it's a small village over 5 days. It's just an incredible opportunity to be around some interesting people.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I know folks like yourself who have been and talked about just the value of the time there.
Mhm.
And just yeah, and it is a bit of a who's who. But tell me a little bit about about the fashion of it all. I feel like there's a big fashion slant. I even feel like now I've not been to this either, but I've had a lot of again associates who have South by Southwest. There feels like there's a little bit
Yeah.
of South by Southwest kind of happening to Davos. It being a little bit of innovation, a little bit of art, maybe. Is there some
Yeah,
of that?
it's so funny that you say that because we were actually comparing it to Burning Man, which is a music
Okay.
festival out in the desert, and which is funny because to get to Burning Man, you have to drive an RV for a couple days.
Yeah.
You may or may not, make it into the camp your first day. It's rustic, it's like porta potties, RVs, camping, but it's amazing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Very
there's
cool.
something about Davos that is like that because there's not enough housing. Just to give you some context, it was like $50,000 to rent a two-bedroom apartment for 5 days.
Wow.
That's a lot, you know? So there's no housing, there's no food. It's hard to find food unless because basically all the restaurants are booked out. So, like, the
Yep.
way that it works is like, let's say GP wants to host all of its business partners, we would book out a restaurant one night. So we're inviting all our business partners at once. And so in order to eat, you really have to have an invitation to one of these hosted dinners. It's everybody's hosting dinners. There's not a lot of content there's not there is a whole event put on by the World Economic Forum, but it's the surround sound in the village that is also happening. And so there's this
Yeah.
packed schedule. All the restaurants are booked, everything's booked. And so either you're doing that for dinner or you're like literally eating out of a gas station.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. So and yet there's miracles that happen. And that's another thing that's similar to the Burning Man, which is like you can walk out the door and you're thinking you're going out to get a cup of coffee and actually you're thrown up on stage and given a Forbes and somebody's interviewing you and putting you on Forbes
Wow.
magazine. So
Wow.
it's
That's awesome.
it's awesome. And so and
Yeah.
so you have to be prepared for anything at any moment, but also be
I
willing to
love it.
a little bit.
I love it. Now how about your fashion? Do you lean into the outfits? Do you get a Davos kit to go
I
when you
I
go
think
out
the
there?
important thing is shoes because you're
Yeah.
walking through a village where they don't clean the sidewalks because it's
Yeah.
eco-friendly, and so you're walking through a snowy cobblestone sidewalk street,
Right.
and of course we wanna look nice, so it's like a
Yeah.
combination. One thing I noticed too is I want to talk to people who look interesting, not people who are
Yeah.
wearing a suit, so it does help a little bit to just bring your
Yeah,
own
yeah.
Davos, you know?
I I I spent a month almost in Switzerland last year, and we really enjoyed, some of the little ski villages, and I can only imagine, like, all these people, and many of them, very pretentious, very, very, very well-to-do. I'm sure they have expectations for what they want. It's gotta be very fascinating, but, look, I wanna come back to something you said about running into an interesting person everywhere. What's one of the more compelling conversations that you had there? You don't have to necessarily name names, but just
Yeah.
some of the things that you talked about and what got you kind of energized.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll just start like globally at the meta level. One thing for me as an entrepreneur and founder, I mean, I started GP 14 years ago now. And at that time, global remote work, we were at the edge of it. Like people were hiring teams globally, but it was really complex from a legal and tax perspective. It was complicated. And now it's like everybody's hiring everyone everywhere based on the talent is commanding where they wanna live. They're saying like, "Look, I'm like your best engineer coming out of Google, he's got a ticket to ride.
Yeah.
He can work from his village in India. He can
Right?
work wherever he wants." It's like even that, we're seeing people test into jobs because now it's not the experience that's necessarily as important as the skill set. And they're getting paid like they would if they lived in London or Silicon Valley, mostly, pretty close. And they're just that's not how we're judging our talent anymore. So, I mean, for
Right.
me, a couple things that felt really reassuring. First of all, the job market remains compelling and hot. People still need to hire people. That's not
Right.
going anywhere. But also for me, a feeling of we did it, not just us at GP, of course, but like we did it as a global humanity, of being
Yeah,
able to bring jobs and talent to everyone everywhere. And that's just amazing to witness
it
over
is.
the course of a lifetime.
There's a ton of human enablement to that, and I think it's, yeah, I've written about that and talked about that. I think there's a lot of human value in the ability of the EOR mechanism to bring people together with that opportunity. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. What else kind of coming out of there has you maybe concerned a little bit? I mean, I'm sure AI is a big conversation, but what are something that maybe you came away with? You're like, this is a little concerning. We've really got to think twice about this or think hard.
Well, everybody was quite concerned about the macroeconomic, not
Yeah.
so like the political landscape. So, Donald Trump flew in and spoke, and, Macron spoke. Everybody was speaking.
Mhm.
President
Yeah.
of Prime Minister of Canada, like, everybody had something to say politically. And, people just want peace, and business
Yeah.
leaders want peace and a stable environment. We all want the same things. We want a stable life and a stable foundation on which to be able to plan our lives, plan our business. And when things are changing all the time, it feels really tumultuous. So I
Yeah.
think this feeling of safety, what used to feel safe doesn't necessarily feel safe anymore. So like at this time, it was like they were talking about Trump was talking about taking over Denmark, and the
Yeah.
European leaders were really
Or
worried about
Greenland.
that. And
Greenland.
people were texting me and they were saying, "Well, I want to move to Europe," and I was thinking to myself, the Europeans don't feel safe right now, and
Yeah.
maybe we're all safe actually because even though there's a lot of talk about all these things, nothing's really happening. So let's just
Yeah.
so I think there is a sense of fear around the political noise right now, but
Yeah.
also a sense of, like, waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything new come out of there around just AI? I mean, obviously, there's always something new coming around, but just anything, any conversations you had, or things that you got exposed to around that kind of maybe changed your lens on what you're thinking about with AI.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. It almost feels like there's a settling into the new normal. It's not like there's suddenly everybody's job is gone. Suddenly, I think some of the fear around that has settled. I do think there's massive fast change in the world, in the economy, in jobs, and everything. But it also doesn't feel like just suddenly there's not gonna be any jobs.
Yeah.
So, I think people have kind of settled into AI is part of the future and we can embrace it, and it's part of a rebirth for humanity and what's coming next where we can be excited about it, but it's like a birth rather than a death is what it feels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely a disruptor, right? It's disrupting so many things, just like the internet did, just like cloud will, would have or had, and it will continue to do that. And I think it just depends on, this is our chance, right, to decide what we want it to be and what we don't want it to be.
Right.
And I think that's where, leaning in earlier than later is probably best, right, to begin to
That's it.
figure out what, how this fits you and how you can use it. So yeah.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts when you were, kind of because look, like we were saying, like there's so much that comes out of it that's like noise, right? Political noise, the Greenland thing, all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. And at the end of the day, I think most country leaders, and I'm sure, and I know most business leaders just want a frictionless way of doing business and things to be cooperative. Do you think that there is any chance in the future that we will see a more cooperative sort of approach by some countries when it comes to employment and taxation and things? Because it is, I almost wonder if sometimes pre EOR or pre mechanisms to handle it how much opportunity it suppressed for businesses and for others, and
Totally.
how some of these how some of these countries have really walled themselves off in a way where it's hard to do business cross border in some cases. So just curious if you think there's any easing of any of that.
Well, first, yes, and it's happening on a country by country basis, and the changes are it's fascinating, but government matters. That's one thing I've learned just watching the landscape
Yeah.
over the last many years. So, just an example is India. I remember back then it was like India versus China, and it was like there's these two upcoming superpowers, and if you asked them both, they'd say they were neck and neck, and who's going to be the next superpower. But if you
Right.
went to China, things were accelerating really quickly, and if you went to India, it was like not moving quickly at all, and it was due largely to the bureaucracy and the red tape, which I always found quite just sad because Indian people are so like the culture is so education focused, driven, motivated, entrepreneurial, creative. Like these people have passion and grit, and
Yeah.
it's a great culture. But at that time, it really appeared like China was going to do better than India. But now, Modi came in. I know he's a controversial leader, but what he's done in terms of digitization of the economy and the ability for the Indian economy to run so much more smoothly just shows the power of competent leadership, technology. So, what they've done over the last, it's been maybe, I'm not sure how many years, but at least 8, they digitized the entire Indian economy. So,
Yeah.
everyone, even the beggars on the street, are accepting digital payments. That
Wow.
is huge for a country of over a billion people.
Yeah.
They did away with, how MasterCard and Visa charge 3% on top of every transaction. They built their own because 3% is a lot.
Yeah.
It's just like the digitization of that economy, and now we're seeing so much entrepreneurship and talent coming out of India, and it's one of the leading places in the world for tech talent. It's
Yeah.
amazing, and
Yeah.
it's no longer just the back office. It used to be people were gonna hire their back office accountants in India, maybe some customer service support that would be low key behind the scenes. Now it's like we're gonna hire our best and brightest minds in India, if
Yeah.
that's where they are, and put them
Or
at the head
wherever.
of the thing. Right.
Yeah.
So that's an example of the types of changes that happen when the right people are in the right places.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Do you see, I mean, look, the media's been talking a bit about how, like, look, a lot of the job loss in some of the enterprises has not actually been AI. It's been, maybe some automation, some other things, probably some overhiring for sure. But more recently, it seems like, there's some offshoring happening, right? You're seeing more low-cost centers, right? Going to India, hiring talent in India, hiring talent in Manila. Do you see those countries in your side of, I mean, at GP, do you guys see a boom going that way right now?
I personally don't see as much talent, like as many jobs going to low cost countries. What we're
Mhm.
actually seeing, it could be our clients. So our clients are usually hiring knowledge workers.
Yep.
What we're seeing, people who can work remotely, tech people, there still is a labor arbitrage going on, but we're also seeing what has traditionally been lower income countries, people in those countries wanting to be paid much more really quickly. So the inflation of salaries is huge, huge.
Yeah.
5 years ago, hiring a BDR, a business development representative in Mexico was somewhere like 10 or 15,000, maybe $20,000 a year. Now it's at least 5 years later, at least 2 or 3 times that, and don't even quote me, but it's gone up really quickly because this labor arbitrage thing doesn't take into account that the person that you're hiring, cheaply today might be the best
Yeah.
talent on your team tomorrow. And if you don't pay them appropriately according to global standards, they get hired by someone else who wants them and you've effectively trained them. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's we're seeing that quite a bit. I personally think some of the job loss that we're seeing is it could be due to AI, but I don't think it's AI taking jobs.
Yeah.
What I
I agree.
specifically see is old mindset, like people who are leaders at the top of an organization who don't have a dive in up to my shoulders and get stuff done with new and innovative technology. If you're running an entrepreneurial organization, you have to let those people go so that other people who want to keep up with the fast pace of times can collaborate and connect smoothly, effectively, and efficiently.
Yeah, when you think about these going kinda coming back to that point about the countries kinda working together maybe, I mean, I feel like there's this talent scarcity that's gonna happen where they're gonna really be fighting for talent, right? Countries themselves, we have so many, I mean, you can see the
Mhm. That's
the
interesting.
population decline in most major countries. Skills aren't really keeping up. You go on and on, right? Displacement of AI is probably gonna happen at some point in some sectors, heavier than others. I mean, it's good for the global EOR business, but don't you think there's gonna be a bit of a scramble for talent? If
I
there's
think
not already.
fascinating, and it's a really good point. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen that in Canada. So Canada did a really good job with its visa and immigration program to bring the best and the brightest tech talent from all over the world into Toronto, and they just like
Mm.
made it super easy. So
Yeah.
we've taken a
Frictionless.
different approach in the United States where we made the H-1B visa very difficult for highly valued talent to be able to live here, which personally I think is a mistake. I understand the idea of protecting jobs for Americans, but given that and what we're seeing is companies are gonna hire that talent anyway, wherever they live. So you might as
Yeah.
well have them in the US borders where we're all generating tax and collaborating together. Like we want the best and the brightest.
Do you think we're making any progress with EOR? Is it becoming mainstream in Davos? Are you guys, I know more
Yeah.
you and your peers are showing up. Is it becoming more understood?
Totally. It's actually it still is not as understood as one would expect, but
It's
somehow
not.
I can tell people what I do and they get it.
I
So
know.
that's a huge change. But yeah, the idea that you don't have to deal with legal, tax, and HR issues to hire people globally is just such a game changer. It is
Yeah.
getting much more acceptable. I think part of why it's more acceptable is because lawyers, tax advisors, accountants, governments are all saying, yeah, this is an acceptable way of doing business. The governments get paid the same amount of taxes. The people in country are well taken care of. If it's a well-run organization, you have to choose a good EOR. But if the EOR does their job properly, then everybody's getting paid, the laws are being followed. And I do think that's an example, going back to your previous question, Pete, of will we come up with ways to do business more easily globally? And I think the answer
Yeah.
to that is yes. And
I think we
further
have
to
to.
that, not just India, but what we're seeing is on a country by country basis, some economies are much more ahead of the curve in terms of making things easy and digitizing. Estonia, really world class. UAE and
Yeah. I've heard the
those
Middle East. Yeah.
yeah, they're just moving, and when you digitize things and can track who is the ultimate beneficiary owner of this company, this dollar, blockchain helps. We haven't seen as much of that as I would have expected, but blockchain helps. All of that makes governance easier because what governance is about a lot of times is following the trail of money and being able to make sure that people meet their obligations, whatever they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping, well, maybe, I guess stable coins are kind of really that opportunity immediately.
Yeah.
Blockchain, there's still opportunities of blockchain for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think the stablecoin thing, it seems inevitable. And you're right. I was talking to someone recently. You were talking about how modernizing outside of just the companies, right? The country modernizing, right? Around in India. We were talking about this the other day. I don't remember what country I was talking about. And we were just talking about how you could automate, right? Like so many things in this process of compliance and to and from the government. And I said, well, it really doesn't matter if every business on the planet had the latest and greatest thing, right? And we're completely mature. If the governments don't mature and they don't make it where you operate with them that way, it won't really ever matter how
Listen.
modernized we are as businesses because the government can only move as fast as, I mean, we can only move as fast as they can. And there's so many things that are still antiquated about so many governments, which again, maybe it's great for compliance, right? Keeps you guys in business because it's a pain in the ass. Um, but it shouldn't be this hard. And I feel like there's an easy, it's just got to be easier, right? To do
Yes.
business and to do things the right way. And in the end, there's mechanisms to help with all that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally fascinating. It's totally fascinating.
It is, it is. It's and you're it's a different flavor everywhere you go. They got different rules in different ways. So it's always every time I look at a country, I always look at these complexity lists and I'm like, you watch the countries move up and down, and it's just the craziest stuff that they're doing. And I'm sure it's very purposeful, but like even just for example, like how much was the ESG conversation there this year with compliance, or how much are you seeing that with compliance?
That's
Because I feel like
fascinating.
that's getting bled over into the HR world a little bit.
HR, I'm not hearing that as much. That's so fascinating that you mention it. Climate change has a big contingent at Davos,
Yeah,
so people are caring about the planet, caring about sustainability. ESG, I feel like, in terms of there's different types of ESG, of course, but like the diversity of people and women on boards and that type of thing.
yeah,
On one hand, that's totally quieted down. People aren't really talking about. Actually, it's almost people are not talking about it.
yeah,
But the impact of those movements previously remain integrated into the
yeah,
workforce. So basically, I don't have a number, but the Davos crowd does seem gender diverse. It definitely seems
yeah.
racially diverse, and it stands true that very few people want to have an all one gender executive team or board. So it's almost like people aren't talking about it anymore, but it does remain sticky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've just seen some of the environmental stuff coming into. I think who I was talking to the other day. I think it was Asia. We were talking about that kind of dripping over into some of the employee side of things, hiring side of things. But yeah, no, this is great, Nicole. I really appreciate all this. I want to ask you this one thing to kind of close out. Like as you look forward to next year, right? I mean, you've been you're a Davos veteran. I know you've been a few times. What do you hope we're talking about next year that maybe you feel like this year didn't really, you were surprised there wasn't more of? Is there anything?
Well, that's funny. I hope that we'll be talking less about politics next year because I would love to see
Yeah,
a little less drama and things to calm down a little bit. Because in the end, the real change in the world is happening with technology and the collaboration between people. And the politics right now seem designed to keep us apart.
yeah,
But where the real innovation is happening is when people collaborate on extraordinary technologies. This is an incredible time to be alive. And yeah, I hope things are more settled on that side so that we can talk a little bit more about the amazing improvements that we've made. AI will be much further along. It'll be an everyone, everywhere workforce. The things you said about governance and like the way people are paid globally, I think we'll be a little further along with that too. So
yeah.
there's a lot to look forward to.
Let me ask you that about AI. I want to push on that a little bit. You've spent now a year or more, way more than a year working on it, but certainly have had Gia live, I think, for about a year
Yeah.
now. What do you what have you learned so far? What do you
Oh,
expect
it's
that
awesome.
is going to happen next?
So so we launched our beta about a year ago, and then we've had our general go-to-market launch was in, September. And I guess what we found out is big companies are really attracted to it, and it's basically supplements their entire global legal and HR team. So basically, you can ask Gia any question. We're integrating with Workday and SAP. We just got
Yeah,
listed on ADP's marketplace. So it's becoming mainstream that companies can use this and integrate it into their HRIS system. That basically there's a global HR employment and HR operations team managing your employment contracts around the globe and employment contract handbooks and providing support anywhere you need to hire people. I guess what surprised me about it most is like the size of the companies are willing to engage at the outset, that they're saying, wow, we want 100 seats of this. And
yeah,
it's big companies, Rackspace. Rackspace is one of our big first early customers. We have a lot of bigger companies that really want it. And I guess what's interesting to me is that bigger companies seem to be taking the leap on innovative AI products earlier than startups. That's fascinating. I think
yeah. That's
startups,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
startups are using like the small daily tools. So like I'm sure
yeah.
they're using like,
They're
oh,
normally the bleeding edgers.
yeah, but they're not looking for Gia to like be their
Yeah,
outsourced employment counsel. So
yeah,
so that's been interesting to me. It's
yeah.
big enterprises moving fast with AI.
Yeah, I love it. I've talked about this a lot. I've written about it. I think this is what EOR was always going to be, was this data fabric, if you will, giving you those insights and helping you really, make great decisions, very, very agile, fluid decisions on your talent. And so I love what you're doing. I love the embedded nature of it too. I think it's where it always
Right.
belonged, was
Yeah.
embedded right up against all the things happening in HCM. So I love that as well. But look, to kind of wrap this up, Nicole, again, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you. Anything to close out here on Davos? Anything, just to kind of round it out for us?
Well, thank you so much for your interest, and I think next year we need to get you in Davos, Pete.
Yeah, please. Oh,
Yeah.
man, I would love it. You give me a press pass, I would be all over that place. I got so many questions.
Oh my god, that's awesome. We'll have to think
Yeah,
about that. Well, I will
please
look
do. I appreciate you. Thank you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you. I
Take
really
care.
appreciate it.